Yasu, Kalispera, that means hello and this good afternoon in Greek. I'm Bill Jepson, and I've been doing these travelogue presentations for a while now, and decided to do the Greece one again because my wife and I were lucky enough to go last September to Greece. And that took the bottom left picture of Santorini. We stayed there for a week. But since 1975, see the picture in the upper left, I look a little different with the beard. Standing on the Acropolis in Athens. And I spent 4 months there going to college and taking courses in English, but it was really an amazing experience. Every weekend we got 4 days off to go to different places all throughout Greece. And then later I went back over there a couple of times in the 2000s with my students. So I'm a high school teacher, world history, all the social studies courses, and I taught at Hopkins and Eden Prairie. So we take the flight over there, and it takes about 12 hours. Usually you stop in Netherlands and Amsterdam or Frankfurt, Germany, and you fly right into Athens there, the capital of Greece. Here's my old passport and passport photo. It's about 8 hours ahead of time, so right now it's 5 in the morning in Greece. So, but I'll take you to different sites in Athens, and then also Delphi on the right there, and some other historic archaeological sites like Mycenae and Olympia and Epidaurus. And then we go to some of the islands, Crete, Rhodes, Mykonos, and bottom right is Santorini we'll end up with. So Athens, here's a picture that we got when we went up there in January of 1975. There was hardly anybody there, and there was a guy with an old-time photo camera who took pictures of us for $4. And but the population of Athens is 3.7 million, just about the same as Twin Cities. And there's 11 million people in Greece. The Parliament building in the upper right is their capital, and of course we'll tour now the Parthenon on top of the Acropolis. So just this last September, after our long flight, Sue and I checked into our hotel in the middle of the night here. We're pretty late, and it was 5 blocks from the Acropolis for about $200 a night. And we had a restaurant downstairs, and we were hungry, so we went down and had our first typical meal with pita bread and a Greek salad with big pieces of feta cheese and calamari, which is squid, of course. And then after getting rid of our jet lag, sleeping quite a while, we got up in the morning and right in the middle of the Plaka. The Plaka is the ancient marketplace that now it's the modern marketplace with all these stores and restaurants. And it's we had our coffee at this wonderful little cafe called Elise, a block away, which was kind of obsessed with the roses. But Sue loved it, pink everywhere. And that was the view of the Acropolis looking up at the Parthenon on the Acropolis from our table. And if you walk around the Plaka, there's lots of things to buy, lots of souvenirs. My students, when we went, in the bottom right is Greek helmets and chess sets, and wool sweaters, keychains, scarves, and even natural sponges. And it's like 10 blocks by 20 blocks long, so you can spend days in there. When you buy things in Greece, you use the euro these days in all of Europe, except for England. And the there stands for, is on every number for euros. There are 90 US dollars, 90 cents to each US dollar. So in other words, $10 is about 11 euros. So if I say things in euros, just add a little bit, 10%. When we went there in 2001, it was still, that was the year it changed over the next year. And so it still had drachmas and leftas. But the numbers are ena, dio, tria, tessera, pende, exia, ta, octo, anea, and deca. And you notice that some of the words like pende is pentagon for 5 sides, and octo, octagon, 8 sides, and decade, 10 years. We get a lot of words from Greek, but most people just say it's all Greek to me because it's kind of hard to understand it, and especially to read with the Cyrillic alphabet. So like Russian, it has, its D's are triangles, its R's are P's, and the P's are upside down U's. And as you can see on the right, it gets a little confusing. But some of the main ones are please and thank you, are parakalo and efcharisto. And so you get used to some of these. But one problem is that they're words for no and yes. Yes is N-E, nay. And no is ochi. And to make it worse, they move their head up and they nod their head up and down to say no. So they say, hey, do you have any oranges left? And they'll go, ochi, ochi. And you think they're nodding their head, yes, well, can I have some? And they're saying no. So it's all Greek to me. And I was lucky enough to live here in the upper left, right about, I got a pointer here. This balcony, for 4 months we went to college. And every Friday they had a market, just happened to be on our street. We looked down on this as they're all shouting in Greek. And you know, it was just really a great experience. Across the street is a butcher. And the tradition there is to hang out the fresh meat, that's a goat and a sheep, so that you know that it's fresh. But in America we go, yuck. But different traditions. And one thing I appreciate, my mother insisted that I write down every day in my page diary, which I had for 6 months from January till July, because I went 2 months throughout every country in Europe alone after that. And so it's great to look back at different prices and places and things like that. So if you sponsor someone to go, or a grandchild or something, I highly recommend you suggest that they do a daily diary, or these days it's a vlog, you know. It's on their iPhone, they record everything, so it's actually easier. Of course, the Greek food is so great, very delicious. There's some of the examples upper left. It's souvlaki, or gyros, I mean, and it's pronounced gyros, not gyro. And then souvlaki is on a spit there, and then saganaki. When you're in a restaurant, you have the Gavira cheese, you light it with alcohol, and then you go, oppa! You almost burn the ceiling if you've ever been in a Greek restaurant. And then, of course, Greek salad and calamari, and then to finish it off, you always have baklava, or one of their many other pastries. This one with walnuts and honey. So here's a typical menu. Souvlaki, moussaka is like lasagna, spanakopita is spinach pie, and domades are grape leaves filled with meat and rice. And here's some of the busy restaurants around Plaka at the time. And then you finish it off with their alcohol beverages. Fix and mythos are the beers today. Ellis means, is the Greek word for Greece. Ellis, Hellas. And then of course Retsina, which gets its name from the resin taste from the oak pines, or the oak barrels that it is stored in. And then ouzo is a licorice flavored, very hardcore. You do shots of that at the end. And here, when we were 20, you can see me on the upright. We had a little bit too much ouzo. I love the old camera that Rick has here. 1975. And, but then usually later at night, then they have a tradition in the Greek restaurants of actually buying stacks of plates, 20 stacks, and then you break them on the floor in front of the Greek dancers. You can see in the bottom right is a Greek wedding. So it's an expression of how much you like the dancing when the more plates you crash. It's a crazy tradition. But of course, and you know this over the Greek with the great Anthony Quinn and Alan Bates, great movie from the 50s. And that song is playing everywhere. This is my student standing with the gentleman in Greek dress. It's a warrior costume, actually. And so we're going to tour the city of Athens. Here's the map. And where I stayed is up here in this Mount Lykavitos, and we're going to eat dinner on top of there. The center of Athens is Syntagma Square, here in the Parliament with the National Gardens around it. And then the famous part is the Acropolis with the Parthenon on top and the Plaka. We stayed in our hotel right about here, just a couple blocks from the Agora, which is the ancient center of Athens. That's what all that is. And so let's start our tour here with the Parthenon. People get it confused. This Acropolis is the high outcrop where all these buildings were built around 450 BC. And you know, around here, nothing is older than 300 years old. So you go over there for the first time. That's why I love bringing students there, and my students, and my three sons there too. Sue and I brought, at one time, we just went to Italy, but when I brought my students to Greece, they were just in awe because, wow, this thing is not only older than 300 years, but it's 500 years before Jesus Christ lived. And so it's been undergoing restoration for about 30 years here, but here's a good overview of the Parthenon. And here, and the Propylaea is where you walk up into it, that's the entrance. There was a big procession up these, the Panetheic way, up these steps. You go through here on religious ceremonies. And then we'll look at the Erechtheion also over here. This is, of course, where democracy began. Here's Pericles speaking to people and actually asking them for their vote. You know, this was the first time they did that, and it now has spread throughout the world and, of course, to America. And this is the outline of the Acropolis. You see, you come up on the west side, the Propylaea, and then we'll go around the Parthenon here. And there's a museum and some other sanctuaries that aren't very well preserved. The Erechtheion is very well preserved. And then we'll look down on two of the theaters, Dionysus and Herodotus Atticus. So first, here's the Propylaea. As you're walking up, it takes probably almost an hour to get from down here, where our hotel was right here, walking through up these steep steps to this point. And then you look back at the Agora, you see the Hephaestion here, the temple, which we'll look at. And as you go through the Propylaea, then you look on your right, and ahead of you is the Parthenon. And here's my students sitting as we talk about the Parthenon. What an important building that was, the most beautiful, considered the most perfect building in antiquity. And you can see lots of influence, especially in Washington, D.C., the Lincoln Memorial, the Supreme Court, the White House. They have Doric columns on them. And even like Northrop Auditorium at the University of Minnesota and our capital, were all influenced by this design. As you walk by it, you see it's been kind of been repaired quite a bit over the years. This is the way it looked originally with a wooden top. This is before the dome was invented by the Romans about 500 years later. So they had, all these columns had to support a wooden roof. And they were painted, we found out recently from chemical analysis that they've been painted very bright colors throughout. We're used to seeing everything in white, but that's because everything wore away. And here's the three different styles of columns. The Doric on the left is the most famous, kind of plain. And then they had this, scroll, which is tonic. And then the third one is Corinthian with Abacus leaves that are at the top. But interestingly, you can't walk on it anymore, but back in 1975, we had the whole place to ourselves. We're walking all over it, 20 years old, nobody's watching. So I posed with these two gals right where the statue would have been 60 feet high, made of gold. And you notice that part of it is just not ever been able to be replaced since 1687 when it was pulverized by a cannonball. Because for many centuries, first it was Greek, then it was Roman about 1,000 years later than that. It was a Roman church for quite a while. And then when the Ottoman Turks took over in around 1450, then it became a mosque. So it's a church and a mosque. And when it was a mosque, they decided to put the ammunition in there and store it there during a siege by the Venetians who were out in the harbor out there. The Venetians lobbed a cannonball in there and blew up in 1689. But here's how it looks now. This is the other side, the west side, just a couple months ago. So, and here's Kennedy, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Remember, she married Aristotle Onassis. And she's there back in the 1970s, I think. So the Erechtheion is another temple also dedicated to Athena. By the way, both of them, Parthenon and Erechtheion, are dedicated to the goddess of wisdom and war. And it has these four caryatids, these maidens in stone here, that were stolen by the British, Lord Algernon, and they're in the British Museum. So the Greeks are kind of mad about that still. They built a new museum at the foot of the Acropolis to house at least their copies of the caryatids. Here's another look of the Erechtheion. And if you look down from there, you see the Agora and the Hephaestion, which is even better preserved than the Parthenon. It's dedicated to the god of Hephaestus. And here's some buildings in the Agora. Here's a map of the Agora showing that this was the center of Athens back then in the 400s BC, with libraries and museums and government buildings. And this octagonal Tower of the Winds, which is still in great shape, which has a sculpture frieze of each of the 8 winds, like Zephyr for south wind and Boreas. We know the Boreas one for the north wind. They're all Greek words. And you look down on one side and you see the theater of Dionysus, the goddess, or the god rather, of wines. And but this has been pretty ill repair because a lot of the marble through the centuries has been hauled off to build other modern buildings. But a more well-preserved one is on the other side, which is actually Roman. So it's much younger. It's from 120 AD. You have to wrap your mind around these numbers. So it's 600 years later, the Romans built this, and it's still used, like even for, Yanni has a live concert from there. Remember Yanni, musician from Edina, who went to the University of Minnesota and is world famous. And you look down the other side and you see another Roman temple, which only has a few columns left, about 12 out of the 100 columns. But it was built around 120 AD. If you're walking around it, you see down there. And one of the columns fell in the 1800s in a windstorm. Here's Suda in front of the Hadrian's Arch. So Hadrian, the emperor of Rome, built all these buildings. And from that point, looking up at the Acropolis, you see these pictures in 1975 and in 2023. Of course, I was at the pose at the same spot, 1975, 2003, and then a couple months ago. Because that's the mountain of Lycabettus. Notice how it sticks up in the middle of this city, and I always recommend it, especially on the first night, to go there and get oriented and see the wonderful city below. You take a funicular up there for, I think, €6 or so. You get this magnificent view looking down at the Acropolis here, the sea in the distance, the Temple of Olympia and Zeus there, and then the Parliament building. And so we booked our restaurant, the Horizontes, for Horizons restaurant, 9 months ahead of time. So we got the best seat right there. Because we did it, everybody who just hadn't booked anything came over, they had to do their selfies right behind us. It kind of became a joke. We had about 20 people doing it. But wonderful meal with this incredible view as the sun going down of the Parthenon all lit up. And the Aegean Sea in the distance. And when I zoomed in, I was surprised to see all these ships and how clear it was, because in the 70s there was a lot of pollution. They didn't have any pollution laws. And cars were relatively new, and they've been choking the city, and in fact deteriorating the limestone or marble in the ruins. So they've since cleared up the air quite a bit. So I was happy to see that. And then as we finish our tour of Athens, we have to go to Syntagma Square, the center, Constitution Square, and there's these Evzonans. Evzonans are these elite soldiers. They have to be 6 feet tall and the strongest men. But they have these goofy little dresses with pom-poms on their feet. It's kind of strange, but here they are doing their walk. It's like a silly walk with feet straight forward and straight back, very slowly. So that's a thing for the tourist to see. And also a couple blocks over is the Panathenaic Stadium, where famously in 1896, this was the first modern-day Olympics, which later we'll see in Olympia started in 700 BC. And then they stopped during the Roman Empire for 2,000 years until 1896, and now we do it every 4 years. And I had my students here do a race around the stadium, the 440. And you can see the Greek flags here with blue and white, and the Greek Orthodox is cross, which is their church. And then a lot of people stop at the National Museum, which is incredible, with all the statuary and red figure and black figure pottery. Black on red is black figure, red on black is the opposite. And here's Zeus throwing a lightning bolt in bronze. Incredible riches there. One thing I recommend is to on your computer, just simply click walking tour now. It's a thing from just the last 4 or 5 years. You can go anywhere in the world, and somebody has slowly walked with their, steady cam around these different places. So when you look up Santorini or Athens and the Plaka, these are screen captures from it, and you put headphones on, and for an hour, sometimes 3 hours, you can walk around the Egyptian pyramids or Paris or whatever, just slowly, and it's kind of become a thing. So I recommend these walking tours. So now let's go to outside onto the mainland. First, here's the Peloponnese. Is this whole island area. It's technically an island, but it's really the southwest part of Greece. And that's where a lot of the famous ruins are. This is the Canal of Corinth, which was dug out right here on the way there. It's the skiing part. And our first stop is Mycenae. And this is way older than the Acropolis. It's 1200 BC. And this is where Agamemnon in the Iliad was. And I'm standing underneath the famous Lion's Gate, which was kind of, they were figuring out the arch they had, that they could displace the weight using a triangle. But these are two lions, the heads are gone now, but amazingly preserved. And that's right here at the entrance to the ancient site of Mycenae, with the palace of Agamemnon at the top. And on the right is a grave circle, and here's my fellow college students standing around there in 75. And when they dug down here in the 1800s, they found all these Greek or gold treasures, like what they thought then was Agamemnon's mask, but the dates don't line up right. So, but you see a lot of that in the movie Troy with Brad Pitt, and it's from the Iliad and the Odyssey, where Homer wrote the first book. It's about as old as the Bible, but it's the second most earliest book ever written. And there's other movies too. You can see 300 or Clash with Titans that have lots of scenes at these places. Just a few miles away is Epidaurus, which has this amazing theater, which is very well preserved because it was buried for over 1,000 years. It's from 400 BC too, but it's in great shape. And people go there, especially with their choir groups, to sing carols there and record it, because it has the most perfect acoustics in the world. And there's still plays that you can see there today. But when and we tested it, we had somebody stand in the center and just whisper. And then we would sit in top seats way up here, and we could hear what they're saying. The acoustics are just incredible, built into the side of this hill. So that's Epidaurus. And on the map, it's here, Mycenae, Corinth, Athens. And now in Naphtalion, we climbed up to this medieval castle overlooking the sea. That was a fun day, with 999 steps. Boy, I was puffing. Now we're going to go to Olympia and Delphi before we go to the Greek islands. And Olympia is about a four-hour drive to the west. And here's where the ancient wonder of the world, this temple of Zeus, was. It's all just a couple of columns are still standing because they suffered a number of earthquakes through the centuries. You can see how the columns have fallen down. And you see here how they're built too, that they use these discs with a circle in the center, a hole in the center, which they line them all up on, and using cranes and levers and animal power usually to build them. And here's the site of Olympia, showing that temple of Zeus, and then next to it the temple of Hera, his wife, the goddess. And of course, on the stadium here, the ancient Olympic Stadium, from 700 till about 200 AD, almost 1,000 years, they had games here every 4 years. And then now we picked it up in the modern days. In fact, pretty soon here, they're going to light it. You'll see a ceremony usually in March or so, and then they bring that torch around the world. And this year it's going to end up in Paris in July. The Paris Olympics are going to be on. And I'll be giving a presentation probably next September, or maybe next summer, or next September of my, the whole thing is about Paris. I've been about a number of times. But here in '75, we filmed ourselves racing the 440, and then I did it with my students later in the ancient stadium. And nearby is well, not nearby actually, a number of hours on a bus ride north across into the mainland is Delphi, which is the sacred site you've probably heard about. And its symbol is kind of this tholos, which is a circular temple. And you weren't supposed to climb up there back then, but of course I was 20 and there wasn't anybody around, so I was sitting up there. And then I told my students, nobody's going up there this time, in 2003. And this is the bronze charioteer, very famous statue found there. But this is the layout of Delphi on the side of a mountain, and here we are posing by the spring where the Delphic oracle would breathe the fumes and then go into a trance and supposedly predict the future from what the gods told them, of course, with the translation from the priests. And so as they did that, the priests would tell the king, the queen who is now pregnant, she will have a son to carry on your kingdom, or you will win the battle tomorrow, or you won't win the battle tomorrow. So they would really always go to Delphi to find out what's going to happen in the future. And it's an amazing site with this beautiful valley, with a theater here, and with, this is what's left of the temple now with a few columns. And the priests would interpret the Delphic oracle and then sacrifice a goat on the front of that temple. And they look at the entrails, and it says, yes, you're going to have a son, not a daughter. So it was all kind of thing. But you can see what it looked like at the time, with beautiful buildings. And you keep walking up, and there's a stadium there where they also had, every 4 years, this time they called it the Pythian Games, which alternated with the Olympic Games. And this is a really well-preserved stadium where I had my students wrestle in it, and there's me wrestling, just like back in the day. So that was Delphi. Just a couple other quick ones is Meteora, which is farther north in the mainland, and that's a medieval site where there's, I think, about 8 monasteries left here, or 6 of them left, to protect the monks from the invading Turks around 600 years ago. And they haul the food and supplies up by rope. You can see it in the movie For Your Eyes Only and many other movies, but it's just spectacular cliffs that you have to take an elevator up in some cases. And then about an hour south of Athens, a lot of people go to the point of the peninsula there called Sunyan, with the Greek temple, this time to Neptune. Well, actually they call him Poseidon, which they Poseidon. The Romans called him Neptune, the god of the sea. Here's my old photograph of it. Beautiful site looking out onto the islands, which is where we're going to go next. So if you didn't know, there's over 6,000 islands, but only about 240 of them are inhabited. And so lots of islands, but here's just a few of the main ones. And there's different island groups. The Ionian group here, we're going to look at Corfu and Zakynthos, and then the Dodecanese in the farthest east with Rhodes, and then the Cycladic for Sykes for circle islands. Santorini is here, here, Milos and Mykonos, and then you get Crete and Skopolis. So first let's look at Corfu, one of the most beautiful islands, and it's the closest one to Italy. So it has a lot of Italian and also British influence, because both of those countries overtook the island for hundreds of years at one time, and has really blue water and vegetation. This is a monastery, the Vlacherna Monastery, out in this beautiful harbor. And it's kind of funny, we rented motorcycles there, and my motorcycle broke. And so the accelerator fell off, so I had to drive back about an hour by pulling the wire of the accelerator out to the right instead of spinning it. So it was a little tricky, especially with Jeannie on the back. She's sitting there, when are you going to fix this thing? But we made it. And you may have watched this great show. If you haven't, check it out on PBS, The Durrells in Corfu. There's 4 seasons. And there's some British expats who go, she brings her family to Corfu, and you really get a sense for the island there. It's all filmed there. There's a big Venetian castle in Kerkera, the capital, and you can see how clear the water is, especially on all the islands, but especially in Corfu. Nearby Corfu, also on the west side of Greece, the Ionic Islands, is Kintos, which has become famous in the last 30 or 40 years, since 1980, actually 40 years, when there was a shipwreck there and 30 locals were arrested for looting the cargo, but they left the ship here, and it's become a stop for cruises, especially for young people to swim there all day or to go up on the cliff and look down on it. It's Zakynthos. And one of my favorite islands was Hydra. It looks like Hydra. It's Hydra, and that's pretty close to Athens on the other side, a Saronic island. And there's no cars in this island, which makes it really special too. Just donkeys and walking and bicycles, if you. And it's really peaceful when you don't have cars and engines all around all the time. And this is Joni Mitchell and Leonard Cohen back in the 70s. They weren't together, but they were writing songs and living there for a while. They fell in love with the island of Hydra. And then another one is Milos, which is not far from there, closer to Santorini. In fact, it's a day trip from Santorini, which we almost took. But it's famous for the diving cliffs. You're just jumping into all these amazing outcrops. And of course, the Venus de Milo was dug up from there about 150 years ago. Here it is, my picture of it in Paris, in the Louvre, with their arms on it. But let's take a closer look at Mykonos, because it's so popular. Went there a couple times, and it's famous for us that you pull in, all the ferries pull in. And then most people go to the other side. There's a series of beaches and resorts like Lindsay Lohan has one and all these famous ones. But we like just staying on this side. And here's the old windmill operator who posed for us. And you might remember the movie The Moon Spinners with Haley Mills. That's all filmed on Mykonos. And they have a great tradition. They have a little beautiful chapel for 365 of them on the island, one for every day. And the streets are this labyrinth laid out in a puzzle so that the pirates, which are a real problem 500 years ago, the pirates would come into the town and they're running around. They'd get lost, and the Greeks would shoot down on them from the rooftops and trap them. And so brilliantly to set up their town. And their mascot is Peter the Pelican. These are some of my old shots. There's me leaning back. Pagota means ice cream. And one of the donkeys hauling the vegetables to the market. You see he's weighing it here, and just wonderful experience in Mykonos. You sit around and you watch the Greeks. Everything closes in the afternoon, kind of like a siesta in Mexico. It's because it gets pretty hot there. And so they have this wonderful tradition that from 1 till 5 or so, everything closes, even the banks. And then they take a nap, and then they come back and eat dinner later than us, like 8 or 9 o'clock after things open up again. But during the day, they're playing backgammon or playing with their worry beads here. Here's an old guy. And what do you think she's doing here? That's an octopus. She's tenderizing it by smashing it against the rocks. So that was pretty cool. Back in 75. Also, these are back there too. This is a goatskin bagpipe, and they were playing it in the square, all the Greek sailors. It was really fun to experience that. They're just all standing around during the siesta. Not a lot of work gets done in Greece, you know. What do you got to do? Open up the store or the restaurant for the tourists, that's all. And we went to the Paradise Beach. It was empty at the time in March of 75, but now if you went, it's just thousands of people dancing to loud music. And but across the way is the sacred island of Delos, where they kept the treasury. It has wonderful mosaics there, and nobody can be born or die on this island. It's a sacred archaeological site with a stadium there and lots of statues, the famous lions, pretty well preserved. So that's just a 10-minute boat ride from Mykonos. Another really popular island is Skopelos, very beautiful and vegetated, verdant like Corfu, but on the other side, the east side of Greece. And of course, it's where Mamma Mia was filmed, the two Mamma Mias in Meryl Streep and Pierce Brosnan jump off the dock here. So a lot of people go just for the movie there. Another one on a lot of itineraries is Patmos, also east of Athens in the Aegean Sea. And this is famous for where St. John, this is his cave where he wrote Revelations and the Apocalypse of the New Testament. And so there's a number of Orthodox monks who watch over the site and the frescoes that are really in good shape from there. This medieval castle was built around it. And then one of my favorite islands was Rhodes, because of all the surprises here. It's the farthest east one. But we rented motorcycles around here. And it used to have, of course, the Colossus of Rhodes spanning the harbor here. But that's all, in 400 BC, it was all torn down and they melted all the brass or the bronze into helmets and shields. But today it's just two pedestals with a deer on top of each one. But there's this wonderful castle. What makes it unique is there's two castles from the 1200s from the Knights of Templar, because they were in the Crusades. They were on their way from mainland Europe to the Holy Land, of course. So they built a castle here, and you can walk around the walls of the main harbor town along the top of the walls, and that's pretty interesting. And there's a museum in there. But a lot of times, I say the funnest time I ever had in my life was riding motorcycles, and especially in Rhodes. We rode from here down to here. Here's our little motorcycles, $20 a day with gas included. That was pretty fun. And where we were going was Lindos, which means pretty. And here's the wonderful little beach here with a whitewashed village above it, and then the most amazing surprise on the top is this another Crusader castle around the outside. These walls are 1200 AD, but inside is a 400 BC temple, which is a lot of the columns are still standing, but this used to be like the Parthenon sitting on top. For 1,000 years or 800 years or so before the castle was built. So you can take a donkey, here I am taking a donkey up this path, and then when you're at the gate, you see here, and you imagine hundreds of battles where they're shooting arrows down on the people trying to take that gate. And I was kind of stupid back then, pretending outside the wall here that I was going to dive down 200 feet, and it's stupid. And so in 2003, I stayed behind the fence. I'm so glad I didn't end my life back in 1975. But they're looking down, and this is St. Paul's little bay here, famously where he stopped on the way back from the on his way to Rome to spread the Christianity. And one of his stops was in Rhodes. So you see how far east Rhodes is from all the other islands. And you take a boat ride now to Crete, and then we're going to go to Santorini to finish off. And Crete is a few hours away, and then you can see Santorini. Patmos was over here, Skopelos is up here off the map, and this is Mykonos, and Hydra is here. So you come into the main town, is called Heraklion for Hercules. This is the Venetian temple here, castle built in the 1400s. So all these centuries of different civilizations that have taken over the small country. And it's famous for many beaches and like this, Crete is, and many hikes to take up into the mountains. There's actually a huge mountain range up the whole edge of Crete, and it is the largest Greek island. We went from Heraklion to Hania, Chania, it's a beautiful little harbor town. And then one thing that everybody does, especially the last 100 years or so, is goes to Knossos, which is even older. This is the oldest, it's from 1500 BC. So older than Mycenae, which was 1200 BC. This is 1500. The Minoans, King Minos, the famous king with the gold. And this is where the story of Theseus, who killed the Minotaur, the half-bull, in the center of this labyrinth of Knossos. And he found his way back with Ariadne. His girl was engaged to be wife, gave him a ball of string, which he strang through the labyrinth, and he was able to find his way out of it after killing the Minotaur. But it has these amazing frescoes that are so old, and they're still in amazing shape because it was all buried for 3,000 years. And so these are griffins in the throne room. This was actually the throne room of the king. And the queen, actually, they had a matriarchal society. It was really pretty peaceful with dolphins and beautiful natural frescoes. And then they had a tradition of jumping the bull from the front. You grab the horns, do a flip totally over. And it's kind of the precursor of bullfighting, but there's great frescoes from there painted on walls. Okay, now to the final stop, and it's a little special because we were able to go there last September. This is Santorini. Santorini is the most beautiful and unique island because it was blown up, it was a volcano that blew in 1500 BC, and here's the center where the cone was, it blew, and then the seawater filled up the caldera. And on these cliffs, we're going to see all these beautiful restaurants and hotels. You see how it's a circle that was surrounded, that's the outside of the volcano, and how it was filled in. And a lot of historians, well, and not so much historians, believe that it's the source of Plato's idea of the lost city of Atlantis, the city that was sunken by great waves. And there's some truth to that, because when it blew in 1500 BC, the waves from Santorini came over and destroyed all the harbors of Minoan culture on Crete, and all those sites there, everything stops at about the time of the volcano. So it destroyed that civilization. So that's the story of Atlantis. But when you're flying over on the way, it takes about 40 minutes or so, and costs about 400 euros round trip once you get your baggage paid for and all these other things. A little more than we thought. Or you can, for 50 bucks, you can take a boat, but it takes 5 hours from Athens to get there. And it might be kind of wavy and windy. So, but this is what the island looks like and the airport, and we're going to stay in Kamari. We decided to stay there with a nice quiet beach, less expensive than Fira and Ia, the cliffside luxurious hotels. And there's lots of beaches you'll see around here. Here's Sue on our first day. All right, we're here. We had 10 days making our Mythos beer. This is our hotel. It costs about $1,200 a week or so, not so bad. And you walk out of the hotel and there's this promenade up and down with 30 restaurants on it. And our restaurant, each hotel has a restaurant, and then you got the beach. We're right there. So it's just a wonderful place to stay and relax if you ever get a chance. This is an aerial view. There's a walkway along the beach, and then each of these is a hotel on the left. This is our hotel with a bar right there. And everybody just kind of walks up and down. Which restaurant should we go to today? And the food, of course, is amazing. And we lost weight, even though we stuffed ourselves, because the seafood and the salads are just amazing. And fresh seafood right out, caught this morning in the water right over there. Even a cheesecake. But this is our restaurant right next, between the beach and the promenade. There's other things to do. You can see, if you want, the paddleboard or water skiing or whatever, jet skiing. Or scuba diving and snorkeling. There's some wrecks that you can dive on. But there isn't as much corals because on Santorini, as all the other Greek islands have a lot of more fish life because of the fact that the volcano blew everything up more recently. And there's even an outdoor movie theater, which was kind of fun. But we chose to ride bikes to the vineyards. This one's right on the beach, and that was a really peaceful, fun thing to do. Of course, the electric bikes you can get, we got electric bikes, even though we usually don't, but we thought we're on vacation, let's take an electric bike. There's lots of different beaches there which are unique because of the volcanic ash. Upper left, this is the white sand beach. And then this one is the black sand beach. And this one's really famous, the red sand beach. Everybody wants to go to that one, it seems. But ours was fine. Kamari Beach was great. Although the stones, it has bigger stones, it's not fine sand like you have on some of the other beaches. So each one has its personality kind of around the island. So, and Kamari is right here. It's about 15 minutes to go up to Fira, the center of the island, which we'll do in a minute. But first, let's look at Akrotiri, which is the ruins from about 2000 BC, or 1500 BC rather, that are, you can walk around in. They have some more amazing frescoes similar to the Minoans on Crete, just 100 miles away. So you notice they both have these very, it was the first time they had such naturalistic depictions of humans. You know, here's just a fisherman, these are two boxers, the Blue Monkeys, this famous fresco, and these boats here. And think of it, they were underneath the ash from 3,500 years. Here's some of the urns and stuff, pottery that sits around, but most of it's pretty pulverized actually. But it's pretty interesting. And then on the way back, half an hour bus ride to that Akrotiri, and we're going to go back to the main part of town. This is where the ferries drop off to go, tourists to go up to their hotel in Fira. And you have a couple choices. Yeah, it's very steep. It's 1,000 feet up, and this is a drone view looking down. And if you tried to walk up the 900 or 600 steps, it would be pretty tough, especially with your luggage. So, but you have two other choices. You can take this modern funicular, which is a ski lift basically, for €6, and most people do that. You see all these ferries pull up here from around the world. But you still can go, and maybe not for long, you still can take a donkey up. It's a famous thing to take the donkeys up for, costs about €30. It takes a half an hour. But it's become more and more controversial lately because it's abusive to the donkeys, so a lot of people don't do that anymore. And there's about 400 donkeys that take hundreds of tourists up each day. But, and there's a limit now, you can't be more than 250 pounds to go on it. But you'll see that in The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. There's two of those movies that they have a scene with that. And then a real fun movie, 1980, is completely filmed in Santorini. It's called Summer Lovers. This is Daryl Hannah in her first movie. And it's kind of fun. You feel like you're on Santorini. But here, when you get to Fira, the main town, and look down on the caldera, I just took this picture, and I was really lucky to have this girl and her brother just sitting up there singing at the time, the Greek Orthodox Church. But this town, Fira, also called Thera, in fact, is another name for the whole island of Santorini. The ancient name is Thera, T-H-E-R-A. Santorini really comes from a church in the 1300s, which is Santa Irene. So it really means Saint Irene. And but this is just a beautiful town overlooking. You see the ferries pulling in. And there's my wife. And as you walk around, you see that everything is painted white. In fact, throughout all the Greek islands now, and I never used to know the answer until recently, but it's actually since 1938, really, because there was a terrible cholera outbreak, and they were ordered, all the citizens were ordered to paint their houses with white lime and antibacterial material. And it stopped the cholera, but since then, every Easter, everybody paints their own house. So it's really pretty iconic for the Greek islands. And lots of shops, lots of things to buy, lots of souvenirs. We had fun shopping for jewelry and pillowcases and scarves and keychains and everything. And you notice the numbers on these steps. These are the steps coming up from the last 5 or so steps that you walked up all the way from the bottom, 600 steps. But what a beautiful place. There's some bougainvillea everywhere. There's pink flowers. In September, they're still blooming. And then, of course, the great ice cream. It's gelato, really, just like in Italy where they invented it. But flavors like mango, and dragon fruit, and pistachio, and all these great ice cream flavors. There's all these luxurious hotels along there. Some of them have what's called an infinity pool, because when you're in it, it doesn't have a ledge. The water kind of goes over the edge, and it looks like it's one continuous water. But one of the most famous ones is Celeste Grande, where the Kardashians stayed in. I looked it up today. I saw there's this one, Aphrodite Villa, with private pool. It's like $2,000-3,000 a night. But if you're really wealthy, you can go to one of those and have your own private hot tub. And these are some great photographs. I didn't happen to take these, but it really shows you what it's like at night when all these restaurants and hotels light up, and the beautiful view. You can have your own private dinner overlooking the caldera. But we did it ourselves, and we're budget way. We're just walking around trying to find a restaurant. And here we are in September, just trying to choose one of these. And we went in September purposely because it's the best time to go, in either May or September, or even before or after that, but not June, July, and August. It's really like the Florida of Europe. So everybody in Britain or Scandinavia, Paris, they all go, many go to Greece in the summertime. And it's just packed. And of course, because the schools are off, and France takes the whole month of August off every year, if you didn't know. Everybody gets a whole month vacation in August. So anyway, when we went in September, just a few weeks later, things were less expensive and less crowded. So here's one of the places, looked very inviting. This is the Iriani. And it's just a beautiful view with it. That was the Iriani, but we chose this one, the Enigma. It's kind of fun. They have these doorways that you go through, and then down the cliffside afterwards. Very unique that you have this kind of thing. But we found a cozy little restaurant to watch the sunset in. There's Sue looking to the left, looking to the right. This view all the way to Ia. By the way, we didn't make it to Ia, but that is the really luxurious, expensive end of the island, OIA it's called. And that's on the other end, about half an hour farther. And when you look down, you see the harbor 1,000 feet down, and the tops of some of these hotels. But the point of being there, of course, is the sunset. And every night it was a beautiful sunset. It sets over the Mycenae, which is the island in the center, which used to be the cone of the volcano, and just magnificent sunset. I had a panorama here. There was some pretty fun Australian group here, about 8 young group, really going wild. But it was fun to watch the sunset there, and the ferries with their lights. And one last thing we did on the last day was to take a boat ride. It's a typical thing to go around the cone in the center, to go along the cliffs. And so we took this boat for, I forget, $150 each or so. And lots of people go to the volcanic island in the middle, where there's springs underneath the water that heat the water. It's 90 degrees. So they go swimming there around the cone here, but we didn't choose to do that. We just kind of took it easy, had dinner, and watched the sunset. cruise for about 4 hours. And looking up at the cliffs, just really fun. You see this here, here's another walkway up to the top from harbor. And in the sunlight, the colorful, mostly white tavernas and hotels look spectacular. And there's other boats like this, these younger people in their 30s. Sunset, watching the sunset there. But we just enjoyed this wonderful view as it slowly went over the end. This is I looked up this boat because this was this huge yacht that was floating around nearby us, and it says Vibrance on it. So I looked it up, and it's $200,000 a week to rent. So millionaires only, I guess. But what a beautiful view with the silhouettes. And there it goes over the end. So, Kalinita, which means good night in Greece. Thank you very much for sharing this little world tour with me, or this Greek tour, rather. And so thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you very much.
I got a question.
Sure.
Do people speak English there too?
Yeah, well, if they're in the tourist trade, they got a shop. There's always somebody, sometimes it's usually a younger, their son. Hey, come on over here and talk to these tourists so that they don't quite understand what they're trying to ask for. And so the young Giorgio will come over, he's 20 years old, and taking English class, and that's a typical thing. But usually, if you go out in the country, they don't speak as much, but you get by. And I learned about 20 or 30 words, and it really helped.
What kind of camera did you have?
On these recent ones, amazing, the iPhone 14 has the recent ones. And I should say these three I didn't take. Oh, good. Well, anyway, this one I took, though, that's the iPhone taking with these shots. But the old ones were taken with a Miranda, which isn't even made anymore, but kind of like a Nikon or a Canon, and back in the 70s. And I took it with film, color slide film, which I'm glad I did Kodak because it lasts forever. And so 20 years ago I scanned each one of those so that I preserved them. And even better. So
How many times have you been there?
Well, it was 4 months in 1975, and then I thought I'd be back there right away, but it wasn't until 2003 and 2005 I took my students over there. I found out that a teacher goes for free if you have 6 students. So I'm teaching at this alternative school in Eden Prairie. We had 100 students and 6 teachers, and I have a social studies department. And these are at-risk students who have difficulty remembering things and have ADHD. And they learn by doing, by experiencing things. They call it experiential learning. So I thought, why don't I start a program with, and every year we'll go overseas. So we took 8 trips, usually to Italy and Greece or Paris. And 1 year we went to China. I have a whole China presentation I've given here too. In 2008, but that was great to have 2 teachers with 10 kids, and it's free if you go in spring break. I always did it during spring break because then the parents would write a check to have you take their student and get a credit, so this $2,000-3,000 for them, but free for me, yeah.
Did you see any evidence of the refugees issues in Greece when you were there?
No, not at all. Not in the tourist areas. I don't know what. But I know that maybe this is, yes?
Did you go with a tour or on your own?
Oh, we went With the students who went on a tour, the first 2 years actually we did not. It's kind of long, and we did fine, but we realized when we got back something could have gone wrong, especially when the train stopped on the way to Paris and the train disengaged with the students on it. And I didn't know, my other teacher and I were sleeping, and we wake up, oh my God, the train. So, but fortunately, they figured it out and got out of the train and ran onto the train that was going to Paris to get the flight back. And so that, it was like, okay, that was too close. We would have had to buy 10 plane tickets at $2,000 each, and then we had a lot of but so what we did was EF Tours. It's one of the biggest in the world, and they arrange everything. So it was great. We just had the students go to them, sign up, and pay the $2,000, and then they booked the hotels, the planes, everything, and they have a full-time bilingual guide, which is especially important in China. You get off the plane in China, and nobody's speaking English in the all. And that was really, where's our guide? She was right there. And so yeah, as a teacher, I mostly was counting them on and off the bus and taking pictures. It was really fun. Any other questions? Randy, you have any questions?
I want to know how, did you walk up that steep embankment after your
No.
boat ride?
No, we took the funicular. It's only
Oh.
8-year-olds and just takes 10 minutes. Most people do that now.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to take the donkeys. So. Yeah, good question.
Are there parts of Greece that you haven't seen that you still would
Well,
like to?
yeah, Meteora, I haven't gone up there. That's an extra 6-8 hours to go up there. We can go up to Thessaloniki in the north, but not as many people do that. The main island I hadn't seen was Santorini. I've seen all these others, but finally I got to do that. I really hit the main ones, I think. I'd like to go back to Corfu though and see more, because we watched the Durrells in Corfu. You really got to watch that and kind of fell in love with it. But there's so many to explore. Each one with its own personality. They're really great. Even Spetsi is the opening scene of Glass Onion, that recent mystery movie. If you've seen that, that's another island by Hydra that I was on too. I could have mentioned. But there's so many. But anyway, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
A couple months we're going to Italy, so look for that in March. We'll go Venice, Florence, Rome, the Amalfi Coast, Pompeii, all those.
I'm dragging my titanium knee. That was really inspiring. You know, and I was cooking that myself. I took out a boat from Italy. Yes, and I just remember I went to Patras, so it was really nice. And then rented so I was there by myself and rented a moped. Same as you. Yes. And you know, back then I was so when would that have been? That would have been in the 80s, mid-80s. And was there a Club Med? I remember a Club Med on Corfu. Yeah. Oh, but anyway, that was so wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks for the tour.
It was so great. Yeah. No, this is all
Beautiful.
you have to be able to walk, you're right.
And it's good when you're young.
Now we're cruising around. I'm down here for a couple of days.
So say hi to Sue. Okay, it was really fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for going.
Is it? Yeah.
Were you teaching? Were you teaching Eden?
Yeah.
There was
What?
There was another one that was
At the high school with them.
High school. That was really,
What year was it?
that was
yeah, I remember. I never saw it.
Oh.
4 years.
It's a funny name.